People tend to get emotional. Yes, Vashandi, we have the right, every right to say no. How exactly does the labor law come into love and work as far as workplace romance is concerned? Joining us on our labor show, of course, we could never do this show without the voices, the experts that come in weekly to give us insights as to what exactly is the official position as far as our Labor Act is concerned. And of course, we've got to have the labor guru himself coming in to help us understand what exactly the Labor Act comes in to say, how, when, and why, and if there are any policies in place at work. Jeja Kamira say he's no stranger to our show. Actually, we roped him in when we're looking at sport and NECs. Toita seiko kana takatasa nyaya yemitambo kuti vose vanga vachimanya vanotamba bhora vachengetedzerwewo vawane vanhu vanovamirira munyaya dzemari nei dzinganga dzichivapo. And he's been on our show in such capacity, helping us understand the legalities around that. He's in studio yet again. You might recognize him as Tafadzwa Masonde, and he is a lawyer. Tafadzwa, good morning. Welcome to Capi Talk.
Good morning, Folake. How are you?
Good. And of course, our favorite labor consultant, whenever you have issues or things that you want us to address on this show, he is the person that you must get in touch with. Our favorite labor consultant is also a specialist in anything to do with labor. He is your guy. From Parent International, Itai Bonda. Itai, good morning. Welcome. Why is this issue about Bonda? Why do you think this issue of romance in the office comes in to feel as if someone is turning up the heat under you, uncomfortable to discuss most of the time? Good morning.
Good morning, Folake. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Maybe, Folake, we may need to know that romance, I don't know, I may not be the one to define it. Everybody knows about romance. But probably let me emphasize to say that these are strong feelings of emotional attraction. And they also involves intimacy. There is a lot of vulnerabilities which is involved when you get to romance. So we are saying this romance, Folake, are we one pabasa jet chero parufu vanhu vachichema unoona vanhu vachichaga romance ndinorewa ukaenda kuchechi chaiko Folake is the same thing. It goes to say that love is actually something that transcends everything. Saka taakuchiti toda kutora this strong feeling yatadescribe by toendesa pabasa Folake. Vanhu vanogona kusaida kuifarira kuinzwa, but zviri kuitika Folake. Mind you, I also learned kuti Bill Gates and Melinda Gates actually found their love in the workplace when he was the CEO and the other one was an employee. Saka, there are good stories about office romance, about workplace relationships. But kazhinji isusu tinoemphasize the bad side. So we are sexual harassment, vana violence, zvine zvichitika ndo zvatinochida kuita chikepo. But generally rudo pabasa hakurambidzwi Folake. Zvinotodiwa zvakanyanya. Yes.
So from a legal point of view and also just leaning into the different workplace policies that are out there, makambani mazhinji akatogadzira zvipo zvanotaura nyaya idzodzi kuti kana mazoita izvi tinotarisa kuti muite zvakadai. From a labor point of view, how does our current law look into Bonda started speaking into that? How is our law looking into the idea to kudanana pamabasa? Melinda nana Bill Gates. And as if you were listening in, do you know any Melindas or Bills in your context? Let us know on 0719 100 404. Tafadzo.
No, thank you very much, Folake. I think the starting point is to understand that the constitution itself of Zimbabwe allows the freedom of association, and that's the premise where we need to pick it up from. And in the workplace, you are dealing with adults. These are two consenting adults of the opposite sex. And generally, we cannot then regulate matters of the heart like what Bonda was indicating. There's an extent to which the law, or there's an extent to which an organization can come up with policies that then regulate these so-called natural feelings that then flow. But when you then look deeper, you realize that policies within the workplace, they are developed as a reaction to certain occurrences.
Right.
Now, there was someone who realized that, yes, of course, we've got some Melinda and Bill Gates stories which are nice. But the majority of the cases, they lead to dysfunctional issues. And it can actually lead to a workplace which affects even someone who is not part of that particular relationship. And to realize that many times there's a very thin line that divides these relationships with sexual harassment. Especially in the cases where we are talking about a superior and a subordinate relationship. Top of a graduate trainee, they may not really be in a position to understand whether or not it's part of the training program. So you actually distort the whole workplace by actually having this kind of relationship. So it is then from that premise where organizational policies will then start to kick in. But legally speaking, there is no law that says you cannot have workplace relationships. But however, the employer has got a right to regulate certain relationships or how certain relationships actually occur within the workplace. So you then get to a point where they say, okay, you can have those relationships, but you need to declare them to HR. Failure to declare that then becomes an act of misconduct. So that is where now the law will then start to kick in. But strictly speaking, you cannot say section what says no relationships within the workplace.
Right. Asi papo pamunotitinde ku HR ka munozama relationship azhinji munotanga muchaziva kuti muri kuzivana naye ka zvatakakura tichitswa kazviya zviya munotanga muchakuri kutungana kwembudzi mozoona kuti zviri kuenda nekupi totanga tatoudza here HR ungasapedza HR yakutoziva vanhu vose vakazama kuda nawo zvikaramba.
Yeah, it's kind of a difficult situation, and it's an area where I can say everyone needs to tread carefully, especially those of my gender. Because we are the one in many cases where whom we approach to then say, I know I've got a story with you and there's something like that. But when you get to a point where probably the other side is accepted, ideally it is good to make those declarations. It also helps to protect you should any allegations of sexual harassment be raised. Because somehow there's a third party who can then testify to then say, okay, these people were in a relationship. So that is where now it would be ideal to make these disclosures.
Right. You spoke about how, you know, nezvakamboitika sure vanhu vanozotanga kuti aiwa taneta nyaya dzavanoda kudanana pano pabasa vozopedza vasingafambidzani zvakanaka votukana zvaramba kushanda. So should these policies police or manage? Because in my understanding they have a different effect. Because when you police when you manage, you're saying, okay, it is permissible, however, let's do A, B, C, or D. Most workplaces, let me ask Bonda, do you feel as if these policies are policing or they're managing? Looking at the definition I've used for the different ones.
I think they are managing for like ndanchida kupa menzani, so especially pawanga uchitaura paya kuti ungaramba here uchienda kuHR uchinotaura kuti ndamulavhu naningi and zvinotipa kuti tizive kuti we have got different types of relationships at the workplace. Ms. Mazondi highlighted the issue of vertical relationship or office romance. Ndo kazhinji inenge ine matambudziko iyoyo, but ukatarisa anenge ari mahorizontal waya vanhu vari pasame position hatiwanzi kuita problem. Wadanani ari kuHR mumwe ari kumarketing, there is no problem with that. But now look at it, this is Mr. Bonda. Mr. Bonda is married. Do you think kuti kana vakada kuita fall in love na secretary uya vachaenda here kunodisclose kuna HR kuti we are in love? It's really that way, handed. Saka anenge ari masecret relationship aya anoramba akadera anonetsa kuti ase kumaregulate. Then kochizoita kuya kwamunoenda kumapati zvakare Folake kunogona kutongoita a casual encounter, manakirwa paya matora mawine enyu 1-2 motopedzisira matova kupi matova somewhere. It's a relationship. Zvese zvinenge zviyakuzoaffecta the workplace. Saka like advocate said here, kanzo handiti vataura vakati we have got a right to associate in terms of the constitution. We also have a right to privacy in terms of section 51 of the constitution. Saka this right to privacy inobvumiza mushande zvakare kuinda into my personal choices ake aanoda. Then tochiinda ku section 66 inotipa malabor rights yafuti inotaura about fair labor practices. Hautendedzwi now kuita discriminate an employee on the basis of sexual choices or orientation. Yes. Saka zvandiringotsanangura Folake ndezvekuti yes, as an employer, you cannot put a policy in Orambisa because my rights they are guaranteed in the constitution as well as in the Labor Act. Chinongoitika chete na employer kana achisa mapolisi ake is to further create a conducive environment yekuti love it take place at the workplace.
0719-100-404. Have you ever been in a situation where you found the love of your life, or even if you're not still together, makatodanana nemunye masangana ku office, and is it functioning? We want to hear more about this. 0719-100-404. Also, our lawyer Tafatsa mentioned the idea that you've got to disclose to HR in a bid to say there's consent in us being in a relationship. And I'm also going to ask Tafatsa to also answer the question differently. When we're looking at the idea of consent versus cohesion, or harassment makatidzisa vabhoda kuti nyaya dzeharassment idzi tiri kuti pane kakumbunyikidza kaitika, or it's something that's unwanted behavior, whether it's a compliment, what you think is a compliment. There could be words touching that's inappropriate. As long as you think it's inappropriate, it's more likely to be considered harassment. Kukanataka kutaura nyaya yeconsent kana kakumbunyikidza kacohesion versus harassment, isusu tiri pamaorganization tirikuda kuzonyora mapolisi wayo kudanana kwevanhu. How do we determine that this certainly was consensual? Kwai graduate anenge auya pabasa wowana supervisor anomufarira graduate kuya hachazivi kuti is it part of the job here, kana kuti ndinofunga nyaya dzomutondo vana vazive here kuti rudo ruda kuti hatichazivi. Tivonese ipapo kuti this graduate aimbotaurwa natafadzwa. Consent there, cohesion, harassment. How then do organizations make sure kuti aiwa shuraka tiri kuona kuti apa pane chiri kukura chazotumigwa makadzi muchato sooner or later?
Saka ndokusaka kanzovataura pana pamazondi vakati vakakosha chaizvo kudisclose handiti kuti indiri murelationship naMary. Chazvinotibatsira maini zvekuti mangwana hatichafungiri because tiri kutoziva kuti vanhu avari vari mulava, but mukaita secret affair yatataura iyo zvichakunetsai mukaita makesi esexual harassment because you do not have something to prove. Saka zvinoitika kazhinji maemployers kana muchiemploya vashandi zviya zvakakosha sere kuisa a clause within a contract kuti isusu tine sexual harassment policy and is going to bind me, so that mogara madi maisana kupolisi iyoyo. That way zvinobatsira Folake.
And for Tafatsa, when we're looking at consent and cohesion, zvinoshanda sepa pana graduate trainee supervisor vauya pabasa pa outside just kunda makabatana maoko muchingoenda mchitadanana pano nokuti mangwana futa anoti ndakambunyikidzwa kuinda kuofisi ikoko. So how do organizations make sure that indeed nyangwe vanhu vauya kuofisi mangwana still mune hazochinji tinova hwawakavandaka vanozochinja but iwo ndio wakafamba 1 to 1 to uchindako zvakazoshata papi, and they can't seem sometimes to substantiate that they then said, no, I've changed my mind, I no longer want to be in a relationship with you.
The inquiry of whether or not there is cohesion, for me, it's something which is substance over form. The cohesion that we have, especially in today's world, is not here, but the superior can make life difficult for you to an extent that you are forced probably to get into that relationship for the purposes of you are probably having a better life at work. So you can have situations where you already have a duty of subordination, especially those vertical relationships which you're talking about. No needs are from the onset, because I can give you work na 4:15, which I know you are supposed probably to take 2-3 hours, and I'll tell you that I want it by 8 tomorrow morning. You're forced to work at work to remain in the office. And it is in that particular way, then in Indosara, I will then offer probably to accompany you kwenda kumba. So in other words, I'm gradually taping your mind to make sure that you are forced to actually agree to what I'm actually proposing. The general economic environment that we are living right now, and now we are saying kuti ndikarambira tafadzo, tomorrow I'm on the street. What is then going? So those are the kind of cohesions that we are actually seeing within the workplace. And now when we are now assessing to then say, okay, was this voluntary? Was this way? We may not be able to actually get all the answers there. But now organizations need to come up with frameworks and policies that allow open communication. That subordinate may not be in a position to talk to me but they should be able to go and talk even to another manager. Those grievance procedures and those grievance resolution frameworks are then supposed to be intact as a way of not only solving issues to do with forced relationships, but general employee challenges that they may be facing. So I would then recommend that organization general, it then becomes not more or less a social persuasion rather than a legal requirement. We are realizing that these are the things which are happening, and we cannot use the law to regulate certain some of these behaviors. But we'll then come up from an HR, will come up from a social justice perspective, which is then promoted within the Labor Act Section 2A. We then say, okay, you need to promote social justice in the environment that actually improves the social well-being of a person. So these are now the interventions that the employers need to then come up with so as to protect the vulnerable.
Muri panyaya iyoyi vabhonda vataurawo imwe yekuti pamwe ndiri mukadzi kudhara ndobva ndadanana nasekretary wangu. I mean, we spend so much time together. She knows my life, she manages, and then eventually the boss develops feelings for the secretary. Pakadero muchiziva kuti kuda munhu ane mukadzi. Does HR still play a role in that? Do you think it is also the responsibility of the workplace to somewhat also be some sort of moral monitor or an ethics monitor in our person's life, especially kana declare I'm in a relationship naningi zvokuba kwangu ndezvokuba kwangu, but I followed as far as those procedures or the policies have said, but there's that other situation. How would HR fit into that? It's supposed to be.
Yes, true. HR guys, they are not necessarily prefects of the workplace to start with. They are basically there at least to assist in terms of achieving this particular objective. Now we've got a complication which came with the Marriages Act, which now acknowledges this civil partnership. And this is where they start. I've got a family there, but then I'm saying, I'm building another one with this particular person. So that is where the law then complicates things. And we are then saying, okay, the law cannot then be the answer to everything. Some of these things we then need to speak to our moral culture and to our grounding as a people of Zimbabwe. I am because you are, the Ubuntu thing. So it's an issue where we actually need to persuade and then make sure that at least within the workplace, people are taught also to behave. We aim to create the right culture within organizations. And it then goes beyond the law.
Yeah.
It then goes beyond what the policies are saying. But we are then trying to speak to the soul, so that at least we can be able to resolve some of these things.
You've just reminded me of a funny story that has raged on about this Ubuntu philosophy. About I am, then you are, then I am, and then the discussion we were having is, and then what? When we've said this, but it's a story for another day. It's just something that just came to my mind as you were saying this. Very interesting thoughts there. Tafatwa is saying, listen, the law is there, but it's not there to be policed to give answers to everything. Certainly your HR department are not your class prefect or your class monitors. And yet we are seeing our everyday situation where love develops at the workplace. Albeit I say you are already in another publicly declared relationship. How then does this work? 0719 100 mainono nevamwe vauya vachitaura nyaya inoenderana nezvo zvizvo vachiti aiwa ina handifungi kuti zvofanga kuitika izvo zvokudana pamabasa mainono. And also Sydney Murato are saying, listen, love and relationship at work can be very complicated. It has many disadvantages. It will lead to sexual harassment at the workplace, retaliation, favoritism. Vanhu, rightfully or wrongfully, vanotanga kuona sezvinoita, oh, ndewa boss kawa hamoni undiye wana they do way fights. So before you get into relationship at work, it's important to weigh the risks and benefits. This one is coming from Amrato. Thanks for this. Let's delve a little bit into this idea. Productivity in the workplace and some of the challenges, Vabonda, that are said to come in as a result of relationship that are happening. Today, balance is saying, yeah, your workplace productivity. No balance again.
Inotoita zvakanaka Folake ndopatati isusu ngatirege kunyanya kustressa the dark side of this office romance. Kune side rakatonaka chaizvo. Tikada kutarisa employee engagement, satisfaction. Unotoona kuti zvinotopushwa now if we have got love base in the workplace. And for instance, it boosts morale. And it means that your mood will be positive for Folake. And unengo wine that infatuation here, you want to wake up every morning and go there because there is somebody whom you love there. And this is the kind of environment that we need for someone to actually give productivity. Then not only that, Folake, it was also realized that couples communicate much better. And one, they are honest. They can also support each other in whatever situation if you are couples. And these are the situations which we also want in the workplace. Not only to forget that they can be a team which can actually push this aspect of productivity and efficiency. That's the brighter side of it.
Musati madaira vabhonda ndaona tafadzwa achisekera chaizvo pahawa kuti munhu unotofarira kunge achida kubasa nekuti ari kuziva kuti chihwitsi chemoyo chiye chiriko nhasi pamwe chiye chakapfeka siketi yayo iya vamwe vanozoti nhasi mande ndichapiwa kachokoleti kusekera kwaita tafadzwa panyaya iyi. Tafadzwa, talk to us about the smile you had, but also the idea that yes, when things are going great, that means kune mfaro. Asi kana paita kamiri zhonga zvofamba. So we're also live on our Facebook page. Let us know your thoughts. Have you met any Melindas and Bills who fell in love at the workplace and have done wow? But also, what if it does not go well? Variko here vana Camilla. By now you know our Camilla and Charles story, right? We always ask, have you also met those in the workplace? Your child's falling in love with Camilla, but Diana's at home. How then does the workplace come in, as far as policies are concerned, to also, should they intervene? What do you think? Let us know on 0719-10404. I'll be getting to your audio notes and your messages in a second. Tafadzo.
You know what? I was saying what Itai Bonda was saying here. Zvakanaka kana zvichiri kutapira. But friend, within Patruku Yakbas, everyone is coming dressed at their best. You find that the ladies who dress their best when they're going to work, rarely would you see them putting their makeup to go to sleep, or to maybe when they are just around their husbands. The same with us guys. You then find that we take our best suits, we also, so you're seeing the people at their best in that particular. So chances are high, more than one person is going to see the good side of Chipo. And when more than one person, tichatanga kuita frictions as we try to clash on Chipo. And now the productivity issues that Mr. Bonda was saying, it then becomes compromised around that particular. So for where I sit, those are dangerous territories to play in. You can't just then be crossing, because chances are high that you are going to step on someone's foot. Either and it all complicates the whole workplace, and it's going to be actually result in a lower productivity as a result in the long run. Yes, in the short term, I can be going to work at 4 a.m., leaving at 7 p.m. It's okay. But 6-7 months down the line, it can actually lead to more losses on the part of the organization rather than to be more profit. That's from where I sit.
You are very right, Kanzo. But I was simply saying that we must not always emphasize the negative. From your side, my blade boundaries in terms of personal to professional. Because Kana pabasa, obviously, problems. Unogona kuva exposed in a different way to talk magara pana Folake magara, so this is not your bedroom. And favoritism which you once mentioned, those are some of the negatives which come in. But remember, we said we also need policies and to make the environment much better, much safer, so that we promote this love. But you know, just actually a downside.
Yeah. All right. Promote love. What sort of mechanisms can you give us as an example that we can then use to make sure that we're going to be managing conflict siwawa, we're going to manage this problem of favoritism that may happen, also making sure that we're not also infringing on other people's individual freedoms?
Yeah, we definitely need to respect privacy. Kananda into a personal choice, personal relationship, let it be at the workplace. Folake. And we also need to come up with my policies that my contracts are no put into place my issues we are in a relationship at the workplace. So that Kamangwana Pagata problem, we have got something to follow. And what else can that be?
Yeah, the issues to do with disclosures that we've been talking about and coming up with
We've disclosed now.
We've disclosed, but there are certain relationships that I would say they are best avoided. Look at the Rita Mbata case versus Itai, the notorious one around sexual harassment. The organization was then forced to come to the defense of the CEO, all in an attempt to actually try to mask this particular issue that had happened. So such relationships, I would then recommend that at least they be, but if it is a horizontal relationship, fair and fine. But the vertical relationships, they are very dangerous territories, and they may force the highest levels of the organization to actually encase certain unintended forces.
So from a solution point of view, because I think this is understood and is a fair position. But now thinking proactively, and I'm also asking you as you're listening in 0719-100-404, how then do we come up with those mechanisms to make sure that your favoritism you can't separate your home and your work issues. If you're unhappy at home, chances are you'll bring it to work. So no more Saka Toita say, what should we be putting in these policies to make sure that we are addressing the potential conflict that's coming with us, accepting that actually we might fall in love at work? 9349, good morning. Take a listen to what this listener has to say.
Hi, Folake. Having relationships at work is not a problem, but it also has its challenges, especially in the area of conflict of interest. How well will the couple handle issues where if they come from home and they are married and work in the same workspace, how will they discipline each other at work? Or if they have a fight at home, will they take it to work and it also disrupts work? So it is always essential to declare that you are actually in love, so that it helps to sort out issues about conflict of interest, where the workplace can provide another work opportunity in a different space for the other one. Then they don't have to report to each other or work directly, which might be misconstrued also by other employees when one is doing well and they are recommended favorably. They will always think there was favoritism, and vice versa, where challenges arise at work. At least it is always known because you've declared your conflict of interest in that particular area. So it does help. One might have to leave work and go and work elsewhere, or if permitted, you can always work in another department. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your opinion. It's absolutely valuable. Okay, we've understood the declaration bit, but now the actual logistics. Once it is, so when we say declare, does this mean the whole office, the whole workplace must know that Herbert Namutsa and a relationship, or is just HR that must know to whom we are supposed to disclose to?
Issues to do with declarations, organizations mostly have got certain already established maybe forms that have been, or certain processes that have to be undertaken when you want to declare. I wouldn't recommend that. Probably we'll put a notice to all staff to then say, no, Herbert and Mutsa are in a relationship.
The relationship notice board.
Yes, it wouldn't really work like that. Yeah. But maybe just to then indicate to maybe your HR manager or head of HR, or even if it is a department, your director, department or director, or something like that. Like we said, we are trying to manage future conflicts that may occur. Even those people who are in relationships outside the workplace, conflicts are there. And that is where maybe some people go to pastors, some people go to tetes, some people go to what. Now we're saying, since this has started within the workplace, let's also try to kind of find mechanisms within the workplace to solve it. That is when the issue comes.
Ray comes in and says, in my view, as long as there's mutual understanding and natural flow of things, then there is no problem in workplace relationships. But Ray, is it unreasonable to somewhat then start to feel as if you know that Herbert and Mutsa are in a relationship, you may start to feel as if Mutsa, if she gets a promotion, if she gets a car, if there's anything positive that may happen in Mutsa's way, you may start to feel that Herbert is somewhat connected to Mutsa's progression, rightfully or wrongfully. Is it unlikely that we may start to think there's a bit of favoritism that's going to be happening between Mutsa and the workplace environment? How do we navigate that? To develop open communication at workplace where there is favoritism, only that. Okay, we need you to be clear. The inini manager yangu yakatangira pabasa. Oh, hiyo. Now yakaona Melinda na Bill. And then my WhatsApp get stuck. All right, let's see if we can get to this message in the last minute that we have left. Okay. Whilst I'm trying to get to that message, because WhatsApp is taking a bit of a while. So, Tafatwa, you've come through and you've said, listen, the Labor Act cannot police everything, certainly not from a moral and an ethical point of view. But how do you think it should address this idea of complex relationship in our modern work environment?
The assumption that we are working with here is you are dealing with adults, and adults will then manage themselves in a mature way. So if I've got a relationship within the workplace, I also need to deal with it with maturity. So where there are issues to probably there's a promotion that Muta I'm supposed to give and there's something like that, I have better ways of managing rather than to be me in the heat of things. Either on the interview panel, I'm sitting there and everything like that. You then need to be mature in that particular respect so that at least the workplace doesn't become dysfunctional. Because it may actually demoralize everyone and maybe lead to a situation where the organization is one big bedroom because everyone, for one to be promoted, needs to have someone above. So we also need to manage and avoid such scenarios.
Yeah, Bonda, in 10 seconds.
We just need to let love flow. Let us not police it. Yes.
Because you believe workplace productivity will increase.
For sure.
Mrs. Manyanga says, inini marriage yangu yakatotanga pabasa nemfesi wangu takatotanga kudanana tiri pabasa pavatara pavakadanana apo. And it's now Mrs. Manyanga. Yay, congratulations to you. Bonda, how do we get a hold of you in future so that we can talk more about our labor issues?
0777 952 135. That's my WhatsApp call, my calling number as well. Social media handles Itai Bonda. Yes, ma'am.
And with that, we say goodbye to Workers on Wednesday. We'll be back again next week. Coming up next is the news bulletin, and that's the number for you to get in touch with us whenever you have labor issues. It's Capital 100.4 FM, Hararis.